Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's Google Hangout. I'm Sheridan Ganger, Director of Customer Success here at Advocate, and I am thrilled to be joined by Miss Jill Rowley. Hello, Jill.
Hi, Sheridan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining today's discussion. I just couple of logistics for everybody on the call before we get going. For one, we are recording this Google Hangout, so if you or a colleague happens to have to scoot out early or maybe they can't make it, we'll be sure to post it to our Twitter handle as well as the Advocate blog post-event. And we will be tracking the conversations and encourage you guys to participate with Jill and I using the Twitter hashtag AskAdvocate. That's hashtag AskAdvocate with 2 Ds. So be sure to send your questions in throughout the discussion, and we have our Twitter experts working in the background to make sure that all of your questions are answered appropriately. So with that, Jill, you ready to get going?
I'm ready. I'm actually downtown San Francisco as well. I'm in the offices of Brandcast, and after this, we're working on version 2 of my website, jillrowley.com. So. Awesome. I'm showered and makeup and ready, Sheridan.
Ditto. All right, Jill. Well, we're here to talk about social selling. Everyone has their own ideas around it. People are reading about it. You're writing about it. You're speaking about it. So I have to ask, how did you develop such a passion for social selling?
Sure. So, it's always about being able to build relationships with your customers, with your future customers. And that's what sales is about. You build relationships with people, you earn their likability and their trust, and you focus on how you can help them achieve their business outcomes and help them solve their business problems. And, part of selling is knowing who to call, when to call, and what to say. And I, just as my evolution, I was in software sales at Salesforce.com in the early days, and then at Eloqua, and pre-social, knowing who to call. If you wanted to talk to the sales ops leader, you didn't have LinkedIn to go do a search, sales op, advocate, and find the person. As soon as LinkedIn came on to the scene, I immediately knew this wasn't an online resume place. I knew it was a place where I could find my buyers. And I'll say it right now, I don't use the word prospect. I hate the word prospect. I think it's dirty, and I think a lot of actually the old school terms in sales, like hunting and farming and my target in my database and a prospect. I just can't stand those old school terms. So, but back in the day when I was looking for my prospects, I didn't have LinkedIn. I didn't have Twitter. I didn't really even have very much on the end of a Google search. And so I just really immediately figured out, like, this was a way to find the buyer, to listen and relate to the potential buyer, connect and engage with them, and build a relationship. So I think it just kind of came intuitively and naturally, like this was a new channel to build relationships.
And you've definitely kind of pioneered the way for how salespeople should do it right. You mentioned how social media has really changed the way that we share information, the way we communicate, the way we sell, per se, for this conversation. So why do you think this changed? Why do you think that this is the next revolution in terms of social media and social business?
Yeah, I think if you look at the evolution of communication channels, if you look all the way back to print, radio, TV, phone, email, web, social, every channel still exists. They're less effective because as consumers and business-to-business buyers, we don't want to be interrupted. We don't want unsolicited emails and cold calls. I don't think we ever really did, but we didn't have any other way to get information. Now, as consumers and buyers, we Google, right? We just go and we self-educate, and so what's happened is the way that people buy has dramatically changed. Yet the way that people sell hasn't kept pace. Absolutely. And it's, those who don't adapt and evolve and learn these new skills and learn how to leverage these new channels will become invisible and irrelevant, and they won't be able to make the number. I think social, you have to really look at everything through the eyes of your customer and understand, is my customer using these social networks? Are they putting information out there about their industry, about their company, about themselves that I as a sales professional can use to do better research on that customer's industry, company, individual? And the best salespeople come prepared, informed, and come bringing value and insight, not, I see you downloaded a white paper yesterday.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah, and you kind of talk about, social media is this complex, beast of a thing, and it can be a little bit daunting, even, for the people that are socially savvy. So do you think that the majority of salespeople across industry, across markets, are starting to think about how to incorporate social selling into their kind of larger social strategy?
I do. I think people are starting to realize, wow, I could get a lot out of these channels. A lot out of these channels that I need, that's going to serve me, the seller, in finding the people I need to call or email or invite to connect on LinkedIn. I think we're going to see this first wave of salespeople using these channels in a somewhat selfish way of what it's going to do for them, versus thinking next phase is, how do I use these social channels to be of value to my buyers, to my existing customers, to my future customers, to the partners in my ecosystem? And those are the sales professionals that are going to really win and really benefit from leveraging these social channels. Because social isn't a new channel to spam. It's a channel to build relationships, to create engagement, and it's the people who serve more sell more. The people who help more sell more, because they're someone that you want to engage with, because you're going to get either an infographic, an ebook, a link to a video, a white paper, a customer story, an analyst report. Like, as a sales professional, even pre-social, I always looked at myself as an information concierge, as a content connoisseur. And at that time, I used, certainly a coffee drinking content connoisseur, because coffee isn't for closers, it's for connectors.
And tea would be for, just kidding.
And tea would be for people who are as amazing as you, Sheridan.
I'll take that one, Jill. Thank you. So we're here specifically to address LinkedIn, and you just gave a good kind of Kickstarter point for this conversation. We all know LinkedIn can be a little bit of a, very kind of cumbersome. It can be deluge of information. And even a platform that you kind of touched upon that encourages a little bit of self-promotion. So as these salespeople are starting to think about engaging in social selling and really kind of transforming the way they're doing their business, how can they remain credible in such an environment? Yeah,
well, first and foremost, be your authentic self. So you have to be your authentic self in any channel, in every channel. This isn't modern trickery. And really, like, the thing is, social selling doesn't solve, it doesn't fix bad sales habits. It actually will amplify, like, bad sales habits. So what I recommend, first and foremost, is to look at your LinkedIn profile not as your online resume, but as your digital reputation, and really look at it through the eyes of the customer, through the eyes of the buyer, through the eyes of whomever you're trying to grow your professional network to include. And what does your LinkedIn profile say to that person in terms of, and I've said this so many times, but does it scream quota crusher? Does it scream expert negotiator? Is it all about how you, like, bag deals and go to President's Club? Or does your LinkedIn profile actually demonstrate to the head of human resources, the head of marketing, the network engineer? Does it demonstrate what you can bring to them? Does it actually talk to the value that you can deliver to the customer? And so, yes, social is a little bit self-promotional because you've got to get out there, right? You got to look good. But I would say look good through the eyes of the customer, and really showcasing how you help your customer achieve their business outcomes and solve their problems, not how you crush your quota and get to President's Club through your expert negotiation skills.
That's great advice, and I wish I had known that when I actually kicked off my career at Salesforce in sales. So that's great tips and advice, Jill. And you talk about content, and you talk about connections and collaborating on quality content. So for a salesperson, what is the best way to share content? Do they have to go and start writing their own blog? Is third-party content okay? Should they be talking about the industry and the market that are in, or just something that's general to something that they're interested in? What's the best way to do this? Yeah, so you got to do you got to play to your strengths. I always say play to your strengths. And reality is, as a sales rep at Salesforce and Eloqua, at that point in my career, my strength wasn't writing original content. I would say it's probably still not my strength. I do it, and I am getting better at it because I'm working hard at it, but it isn't like the natural strength. My natural strength is talking and listening and asking questions and engaging. It isn't writing. So I'm not saying that salespeople need to go out and write their own original blogs. Now, if it's a strength of theirs, absolutely do it, right? Play to your strengths. I am such a huge fan of OPC. I'm down with OPC. Yeah, you know me. I'm down with other people's content. And I think about, like, okay, what's the kind of content that would be useful to my buyer, that would help my buyer answer questions that I know she has, that she could go out and find the answers to via Google search, but I can serve it up to her because I'm her concierge. I'm her information concierge. So content is absolutely, I say, the currency of the modern sales professional. And salespeople, I used content as my currency via an email. So I would read analyst reports, I would read thought leader papers, and I would like take the 3 or 4 points out of that piece of content, and I would put it in an email template, and I would have draft emails, and I would then say every day, every deal, why hasn't Mary gotten closer to being able to say yes to buying my product? And I would say, does Mary need to know about email deliverability? Does Mary need to know about security in the cloud? Does Mary need to know about customers like her who have achieved great success? So I would use content as I wouldn't do the whole circling back, checking in to see if you're ready to close the deal because I need to make my number and cash my commission check. I would think about how I would continuously be educating everyone in the buying committee with content that was relevant to who they were, the role they played, what they cared about. And I started to move that activity from email, one-to-one or one-to-a-couple, to social. And now not only does Mary and Bob see the content, but everybody else in my social networks is starting to see more content that it isn't narcissistic, self-absorbed, chest-pounding. There is some of that, right? Like we talk about the whole social self-promotion aspect. I'm a keynote speaker, but if people don't know that I do keynotes and people don't know that I do a great job and that people love, when I'm speaking, and I don't amplify that advocacy from people I've done keynotes for, then I'm not being a smart businesswoman. So that content, using other people's content to gain visibility, earn trust, and also one of the things, which is kind of funny because at Oracle, this just shows the traditional mentality of reps were not allowed to have relationships with analysts or journalists. And that goes completely against
my recommendation that your salespeople understand who the influencers, thought leaders, analysts, gurus, baking eating unicorn people are in your buyers. Thank you, baking eating unicorn. You can tweet that. Who those people are in your buyer's world, and get close to them. Get close to those influential people. Understand the kind of reports they're putting out, the trends in the industry, and share that content, that OPC from those thought leaders, analysts, journalists, and your social influence increases, your social capital increases when you are surrounded by influential people. That makes sense?
I couldn't agree more. And you know what? I'm on the front line of our customers, and they're constantly asking me about content creation, the best ways to share. So that really helps paint a solid picture on not only the value of content, but really the best way to share that content and where you should be gathering that content. So I want to flip it a little bit. We've talked about providing our salespeople information and content to help up their sales strategies. Now let's talk about listening. I know that social listening is really important for the modern day sales professional, and there's so many technologies out there, there's so many techniques to do this right. What do you think is kind of the best way to go about listening to what your customers want, listen to what your prospects want?
One size doesn't fit all, first. So, in sales, if you're on the telemarketing side, if you're on the inside sales side, if you're field sales, if you're named account rep, if you're install base, right, you're going to need to listen at different levels and different volume, right? So if you're, let's say, an inside sales rep and you have 1,000 accounts, setting up listening to listen to 1,000 accounts is not easy.
Yeah, not feasible, yep.
It's not. I haven't found a tool yet and I'm sure I'll get emails from some of the tool providers saying, we've got the magic tool! Do you want to see a demo of it?
No!
Yeah, and I get that all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many emails I get saying, we've got the coolest, newest social selling tool. Would you take a demo? And I'm like, I'd rather hear about a customer success story. If you can frame it and you can tell me a company who's actually using your product and generating like value, and that reps are actually getting meetings and they're closing deals because of the way that they were able to use your tool, then that you've got me. But I don't need to see another demo of a tool. I want to hear about results and how it actually helps the sales rep listen and achieve success. So anyways, that was a sidebar.
No. Yes, salespeople want results and their bosses want results. So no, that's perfect. And actually, this leads me into the next part of our discussion is the reason people get into sales is, let's be honest, they want that commission check. They want to make money and they want to keep filling their pipeline. But in terms of social selling, should these salespeople be thinking about other things besides revenue, besides pipeline?
Yeah, no question. I mean, in sales, the rubber meets the road with revenue. Like, that's how you're measured. So you're measured on the transaction, closing the deal. However, and this is one of the things I want to change in the industry is, let's say Susie closes a deal and she has cashed her commission check and she's on the beach at President's Club. And that customer becomes what I call a negative Nancy, because Susie didn't really set the expectations correctly, didn't really understand that customer's requirements and needs and potential concerns or issues, speed bumps. But Susie doesn't care because she's already closed the deal, she's already cashed the commission check, and she's already at President's Club. However, negative Nancy, the customer, now goes and takes to the social networks and tells people how crappy her experience is with this product, with this company. That damages the ability to acquire new customers. Absolutely. And it puts seeds of doubt into other customers' minds. However, let's say Susie closes the deal and it turns into a positive Patty. someone who is really delighted, who is like, really transforming the way that their organization is able to measure marketing spend to revenue, is like getting promoted inside their organization because they've been able to solve a big, hairy problem. Susie's made the same commission check, whether it was negative Nancy on the end of it or positive Patty. And I think we need to start compensating more on customer lifetime value and advocacy, because your best salespeople are not on your payroll. Your best salespeople are actually the customers who are willing to tell their peers about the success. And the stat is, and it's you can find it online, but it's in Brian Solis's book, WTF, What's the Future? There's this great graphic, and I tweeted it the other day. It's
actually asked Brian to join the conversation today. I sent him a notification. Hi, Brian. Hope you're on the call.
Yeah. Hey, hope you're listening. I'm actually partnering with Altimeter Group on a couple engagements to bring social selling to some of their larger clients. I love their work. Charlene Lee did a brilliant TED Talk via IBM. It's available via the web, and they published a report, the state of digital transformation. So I love their stuff. Big fan of Altimeter.
Actually just popped up on my notifications that they're sharing this link to their entire group. So we're hoping Altimeter Group.
Great, yeah, and they're actually putting the final touches on a social selling research report, and they're looking for practitioners to participate. They want to hear from companies who are going down this path, who are either early stage down the social selling path, mid stage, late stage. But there's a call from Altimeter Group for practitioners. They've done a number of interviews with vendors and thought leaders and ninja gurus, experts. They really want to hear some additional practitioners. So the point, let me think if I can circle back here. Where were we? Where was I going? It's kind of crazy.
We were just talking about sales, and should they be thinking about other things just besides pipeline and making money, and you kind of broke out the different scenarios, which actually leads me to another kind of question that I want to cover, and I want to be respectful of people on the call in your time, Jill. We have a couple more minutes left here. Sales teams are diverse. They're made up of a variety of different people with different personalities. We have our traditional sales folks that maybe still rely on that cold calling, or as I know you say, kind of cocktails. And then we have this younger sort of millennial generation that are really socially savvy. They're connected. They're online constantly. They're on multiple iPhones and mobile devices and their iPads, having conversations. So how can an organization make everybody, regardless of what type of salesperson you are, effective at social selling?
Yeah, I think the opportunity is even bigger than just taking your sales organization and really getting them active and engaged in social. The opportunity is beyond the sales team. It's actually the social employee. And I haven't mentioned this book in a while. I don't know why, because it's a great book. It's by Cheryl and Mark Burgess, and the title is The Social Employee. And I do a lot of work with GE, and they're a 130-year-old company. They have 300,000 employees, and they're going through this massive transformation to digital, to the Internet of Things. Their machines, they're a manufacturing company, right? They produce jet engines, they produce locomotives. So these machines are talking, and they're really all the way from Jeff Immelt. The theme right now within their organization is our sales organization is going to focus on the business outcomes of our customers. They are not going to focus, and he even wrote he's an influencer on the LinkedIn platform, and he wrote a post about, he's very involved in their advertising and approving their ads, and he wrote that he would prefer that in the ad they showcase their great products, but he knows that it's more important to showcase the business outcomes that their customers are achieving.
Absolutely.
they're going through this really rethinking, and they're following the lean startup methodology, and this big old company is really reinventing itself. And at the core of that company, though, has always been a great culture, right? Like, you're proud to work at GE. And so I've been talking with them about taking the entire employee base and getting them more active in their own respective social networks, because we're influenced more and more by people.
Absolutely.
Not by websites, email campaigns, newspaper ads, banner ads, billboards. We are the most reliable source of information that influences our purchase activity is through the people we already know. And
I agree more.
Yeah. So it's, social selling, no question about it, right? Like, and I have 5 pillars. It's moving from resume to digital reputation. ABC, always be connecting, because your network is your net worth. So grow your professional network. Use content as your currency to engage or re-engage buyers. Listen for problems, lead opportunity, conversations, and then measure. We got to measure new metrics. My movement is much more than new skills and new tools. My movement starts with a mindset shift, moving towards conscious selling, which is really about serving and helping the customer. And it's hard, right? Like, you want to make your number. In sales, you're probably pretty darn competitive, but knowing that the way to make the number and the way to earn a reputation over time is by focusing on the business outcomes of your customers.
Yep. And, we are, just a couple of minutes away from our half-hour mark, and there are, questions coming in through Twitter. But I do want to just close off, our high-level conversation. If you were to tell our audience 2 things, 2 maybe pieces of homework, maybe how to build their profile or just kind of kickstart their social selling efforts, what do you want everyone on this call to do today?
Yeah, so the first pillar is look at your LinkedIn profile through the eyes of your customer and optimize it for them. People are like, oh, no, but what if I'm really looking for a job and the recruiter's not going to find me because I don't scream about my quota crushing capabilities? The reality is that recruiters are actually starting to look for more of that subject matter expert, that buyer-centric salesperson. So you're getting ahead of that movement. So, and then I always say fish with a fish or swimming. So a lot of salespeople say, oh my God, Twitter, no way. Well, have you really looked? Have you really done an advanced search on Twitter for keywords that would be meaningful and compelling to your customer's world? Have you looked at the last 5 deals you've closed and looked at everyone who was on the buying committee and seen if they're actually active on Twitter? Right? Have you validated, so fish with a fish or swimming? First, figure out everyone should be on LinkedIn and everyone should be using it more as their digital reputation and building buyer-centric profiles. Not everyone should be on Twitter, or at a minimum, if you're on Twitter, look good, have a professional photo, hashtag no eggheads allowed. That's the default image. You need a summary of who you are. Have a link to your LinkedIn profile, that whole social surround strategy, and start to follow very slowly the people who you want to learn from in the industry before you actually start to tweet, because the natural inclination of people who get on Twitter is to tweet self-promotional, company-branded stuff.
Yes, it just turns into spam on our feed. We don't like it.
No. So look at your social networks as a way to find your buyers, listen, relate to your buyers, connect, engage with your buyers, and ultimately to amplify your buyers. So think about it from that perspective, building authentic relationships.
All about authenticity and consistency. And actually, Jill, you just kind of set a teaser for our next HOA, which will be next month. And we will be diving into a little bit more on that Twitter sphere and how to activate your social selling using Twitter specifically. So thanks so much for introducing that. I think we've come to the time to turn to our hashtag Ask Advocate. I'm going to kind of just roll through some of these questions here, Jill. So our first question, where does social selling fit into the whole social sales process? You talk about, cocktails and having conversations, but he says, when do I know to take these conversations offline?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's no magic formula. I usually start by giving some examples, right? So, and social is all the way through the process, like from the very beginning. And if marketing is filling your pipeline with massively qualified leads and they're converting at a rate that you're crushing your quota, and you don't need to actually do any prospecting on your own, then you don't have to use social selling for prospecting, but you should definitely use it for research, to be relevant, to build relationships that drive revenue. And after the customer signs, well, don't you want to build the relationship with them and hopefully turn them into an advocate and then amplify their, you don't want to they sign the contract and then you stop engaging with them. So social is it's like the phone, it's email, and you don't just stop using that channel. So in terms of, I give a couple examples. So I did a keynote speech for a company called ASCO Pneumatics, and they manufacture valves.
Okay.
They sell to engineers. And the CEO of the company sent me an invite to connect on LinkedIn after my presentation. And yeah, totally, he got it. He got his light bulb moment. and so then I thanked him for the opportunity. This was all via email. I thanked him for the opportunity to present, and I said, if you are so willing, I would appreciate any introductions to the folks at Emerson, because ASCO is part of Emerson. Emerson is a $25 billion company. I'm sure that they have sales kickoff events where they need a keynote speaker. I'm sure that they have, salespeople who need the training to actually become social sellers. So I said, if you're willing, I would appreciate introductions to anyone at Emerson or beyond. And I even said a salesperson's best friend are referrals. So he emailed me back, and he copied in other people on the email that I didn't know who they were. And he didn't actually formally introduce who these people were, but being the social selling sleuth that I am, I went and Googled these new names.
Yeah.
And I found one of the guys was a guy named Charlie Peters. Charlie is the chief information czar at Emerson. He's on the board of directors of a $25 billion company, and he's on the email complimenting my keynote at ASCO Pneumatics kickoff. So I want to know who this guy is. I want to know, how can I start to build a relationship with Charlie? So he's got a lot of content actually out there on the web, video interviews. So I listen to the video interviews. And when I invite him to connect on LinkedIn, and when I respond to the actual email, I reference the information that I'm able to find out about Charlie via the social web. I'm trying to showcase that I'm sipping my own champagne, that I'm using. Yeah.
And you really just tie it back to the concept of that kind of people-to-people marketing. I know I talk about it, I write about it a lot, that people want to connect to a person, and with the information that social media has provided for people to connect, that is absolutely what people should be thinking when they're starting to nurture relationships. So great answer. The next question, are there risks associated with social selling? Because, as we just kind of mentioned, things can get personal too fast, and how do I guard myself against this?
Yeah, I mean, common sense, not optional. Don't do social slutty.
Okay.
So one of the things, social is a way to, again, find, listen, relate, connect, engage, and amplify. Find, listen, relate, connect, engage, and amplify. So what I don't recommend is, let's say, I'll take GE again as an example. Beth Comstock, the CMO. She's actually active on Twitter.
Okay.
She does a lot of speeches that are recorded that I've been able to watch via video. I even have it set up that anytime Beth sends a tweet, I'm notified in real time, so I can see in real time what she's tweeting about. Now where I would offend her and turn her off is if every time she tweeted, I retweeted it.
Yep.
Every time she tweeted, I favorited it. Every time she tweeted, I replied and tried to engage her. That's what I call social slutty.
Yeah.
Social stalking, right?
It's too much. It's not authentic.
It isn't, and it's like, whoa, don't you have anything else going on in your life? Like, that's just
You're
it's
sitting there, ding, ding, ding.
but I do monitor that because I want to know what she cares about.
Absolutely.
I want to know. I'm going to see her next week in Columbus, and I want to, if I get that moment for that face-to-face conversation, which will happen, I want to make sure that I'm talking about things that she cares about. So she recently spoke at a storytelling conference in New York, and I know that because she tweeted about it, and she tweeted the video interview of her talking about the role of storytelling. So I'm able to have a much more relevant conversation. I am going to be interesting to her because I'm interested in her, and I'm not, I feel like that isn't crossing the line. Right, by monitoring what she's doing in social, listening to what she cares about, sending her content that is relevant to storytelling or digital marketing or social selling, that isn't social slutty or creepy. It's
smart. Yeah.
It's smart, right?
Yeah. Awesome. We have some more coming through the hashtag here. I've joined many groups on LinkedIn, but I'm not seeing much benefit. Is there something I'm missing?
Whew, this is
This one a little bit of a doozy?
Well, so when I started to get, in the beginning of my social selling and using LinkedIn and using groups, I was a huge fan of groups, and in fact you can join up to 50 groups, and so would advise join 50 groups. But the challenge is that there's a lot of, it could be dead silent. I was going to say a lot of noise, but it can actually be dead silent, some of these groups. Yeah. So why be part of a graveyard group, right? Like, if there's nothing happening in the group, don't be a member. So I'm actually recommending being more selective and using keywords to find which groups actually have the people in them that you want to create relationships with, not sell to, create relationships with. And I think there are too many groups. There are over 2 million groups now. And there's not enough real good collaborative community. It isn't like a real community platform like a Get Satisfaction or a Jive or a Lithium, or even Salesforce has a new community platform. I feel like the groups, the functionality hasn't really evolved, and that it's just harder and harder to find the right groups to be a member of. That is, and before, but you have to validate this, right? You have to figure out, you have to go find if there are groups that are vibrant and lively and there's lots of good conversation, and those are the groups you want to invest your time in, not the ones where nobody's talking or everyone's being self-promotional. And so it's just harder. I don't have a real easy answer to that.
It is, and it's you just said, and it's an investment. And if you are really passionate about wanting to start a new collaborative group and you're not finding one, I would say start one.
Yeah.
If you have a network, invite people to that group, start conversations, start sharing information, and just see if that kind of helps kickstart the activity. Because as you said, there are a lot of graveyard groups out there, and it might not be worth your time. So if you can't find it, make it.
Yeah. I agree.
So I want to get through the questions that we have, and I apologize if there are some questions that we don't get to. I know that Josh has been working on the background to get those answered, but there's just a couple that I want to just wrap up with Jill. Personal and professional reputations are transparent on social. Should I be worried about keeping them separate?
Well, if you suck offline, you are going to suck more online. So be careful, right? Like if your personal activities should not be revealed in social professional networks, then you've got a bigger problem, right? So I think here's the thing: we are seeing a trend, a movement towards well, that's just business. That's business. That's not personal. That's business. Bullcrap.
You're online. It's out there.
It is like I say business is personal to me because business is done between people. It's personal, and so you have to, again, this comes to what are you comfortable with? How much are you willing to actually put out there and share? And I have just a personality, offline and online, where I'm a prolific sharer. You ask me a question, you're going to get an unscripted, unfiltered, non-manufactured, not approved and certified by PR answer. You're going to get the real deal from me.
But that's what people crave. That's what people want. They want to know that you're not a robot and that you're a person with a personality and opinion. Yeah,
well, that didn't fit well at Oracle. But that, I think you have to be comfortable. And so if you are like a highly active political figure with really strong views on politics that might offend other people, social might not be the channel that you actually want to, leverage from a professional perspective. You might actually alienate certain people, and the reality is, whether if you are out there on Twitter tweeting and you haven't protected your tweets, which I don't know why you would be on Twitter and protect your tweets. I haven't figured that one out. Then not only can everyone who's following you see what you're tweeting, everybody in the world can see what you're tweeting. So you need to think about, like, what are you putting out there? What is, going to earn you likability and trust and attract other people to you? So I hate it in sales. We organize salespeople into hunters and farmers. Like, how many customers want to be hunted and farmed? They don't want to be hunted and farmed. They want to build authentic relationships. And so I think the best salespeople are actually magnets, right? They're so out there putting out valuable information, sharing great insights, connecting people to other people and information, that they become magnets for their buyers. They're not hunters and farmers.
Yep. And that leads us to kind of our last question. We have a visitor from France, and they ask, do you have any international social selling tips?
I'm actually doing a presentation next week for a European group, and the same question came up, right? Be mindful that this is European audience. And I said, the tools might differ, right? So I actually went and joined Zing. It's a huge social network in Germany. And I said the tools might differ, but the concepts of being interesting because you're interested in something other than yourself, in building authentic relationships based on trust and value, on sharing content that is relevant to the customer, on, if they are in social, if your customers or future customers are on social, engaging and amplifying what they care about across your social networks. The culture, there are cultural differences of how much, but the concepts, the basic foundational concepts are universal. So I respect cultural differences, and so know those and be mindful of those. But I think it's anywhere universal. Building relationships is about helping other people, not about serving your own narcissistic, self-absorbed needs.
Awesome. So Jill, that about covers everything that I want to discuss today. I know we did run a little bit over, so I appreciate our audience sticking with us. This was a amazing conversation. I know I learned a lot. Jill, on behalf of Advocate and everybody on our team, thank you so much for joining our live Google Hangout. I had a lot of fun. I look forward to working more closely with you and continuing to follow kind of all the awesome things that you're doing around social engagement and activating your social sellers. So thank you so much. Yeah, thanks Sheridan, and thanks to Advocate for allowing this to be unscripted and authentic. That's the way. We keep it fun. There's no slides around here, I promise. Yeah. And to our audience, as I mentioned at the beginning, we did record this, so we will clean it up and put it on our Twitter handle and on our blog. And if you have any other questions, we will maintain to watch that hashtag #AskAdvocate to keep the conversation going. Remember, you are what you tweet. Exactly. Thanks, Jill. Have a wonderful day, everybody. All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.